Hello and welcome to 27Crows Radio. I'm Bree, and this podcast is available on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, along with a video version on YouTube. Today, my guest is Mark Collett, the author of The Fall of Western Man, an outspoken nationalist as well as a political activist from the United Kingdom. He hosts a weekly podcast and has helped raise awareness to the moral decay taking place in Western society. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. I did some reading of your book. I flipped through it, and it was very compelling. You lay out so many in-depth reasons as to why Western men are in decline in recent decades. But I was curious to know a few of your thoughts on the recent events in Charlottesville that has resulted in protests across the United States. I know it can be difficult for the average listener to decipher, given that there's so much misinformation going around, but it seems more and more as I listen to right-wingers who were there that this entire thing was potentially a setup. And I've even heard accounts that claim that the police and certain government officials were laughing about the deaths that took place just to smear the right.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I'll make my point clear on this straight away. From my point of view, Charlottesville was a setup. I mean, I've been involved in the nationalist movement for years. And when I say years, I'm talking, the turn of the century. I got involved around the year 2000, and I've seen many demonstrations like this, many different marches and events, and I've seen the way the police operate. The police are under orders to allow violent anti-fascists, violent leftists, anarchists, violent black groups to attack nationalists, to attack patriots. That is what they do on the orders of their paymasters, because they know when there are violence, when violence erupts at these rallies, when people get attacked, when people turn on the television or see it in the press, bricks and bottles being thrown, people on the floor, people with their faces cut open, it puts them off joining us. It's a deterrent to getting involved in nationalism, to getting involved in alt-right politics. And they use this as a way to scare people away. So some people will be put off because they'll be like, oh, I don't like anything to do with violence, so I could never support them. And some people, they'll be put off because they'll be like, well, even though there's violence, I still support them, but I'd never attend one of their events because I personally don't want to get, a canister of mace sprayed in my face or a brick
acid,
or bottle
for God's
bounced
sake.
off.
Did you see what happened in
anything like
Alaska?
that. Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely terrible. But the thing that I'll say that about Charlottesville, which I find most disgusting, obviously, the police, the left, they are the trouble cause. And I just want to point something out here. At the G20 summit, Hamburg burned. Shops were looted. Things were set fire in the streets. The police were attacked. Now, there was no one from the alt-right there. No one at all. That was the left. The left on their own destroy everything in their path in the name of anti-capitalism or anti-fascism. If you look at Black Lives Matter events, they shoot police. They actually killed 3 police officers in Baton Rouge and injured another 3. They burn, they loot, they riot, they smash the property of innocent people who've got nothing to do with anything that they're protesting against. They literally just go on a rampage. And again, they do so without any intervention from the alt-right. Now, on the Friday night, I saw a completely peaceful and very inspirational torchlit parade, and there was no violence. Exactly. And that is something which I'll come back to in a second. But there was no violence at all. The violence only starts when these violent groups appear. When the people who burn Hamburg down, the people who shoot at police officers, the people who destroy public property, when they arrive to confront the alt-right, that is when the violence happens. We are not disorderly people. You see, one thing that defines nationalism is we believe in order, we believe in discipline. We don't riot, we march. We try to inspire people, not by the destruction of property, not by attacking businesses, not by throwing abuse at people, but by doing things that are going to inspire our people. And that torchlit procession was inspirational. And I was happy to see that because that showed something really positive to me, that the alt-right in America has learned. Now, earlier this year, I went to Latvia to a remembrance day for those who fought against the communists. And that was absolutely wonderful. There was no one drinking alcohol. There was no one who looked ridiculous. There was no trouble. There was no people swearing or shouting or acting in a manner that's untoward, that's unbecoming of what we stand for. There was very attractive girls with flowers in their hair handing out roses for people to put on the monument. There were flag bearers. And I made a podcast about that. And I said people need to take inspiration from what's happening in Eastern Europe and copy their dignified approach. And believe me, I have seen people drinking at nationalist events in Britain. And I want to distance myself from that because that's not what nationalists should be about. But when I saw the alt-right doing that torchlit parade, I thought, this is fantastic. This is something that's going to inspire people, and they've learned the lesson of what we need to do to show ourselves in a dignified and decent manner. And that's why I think the police were so intent on causing so much trouble on the Saturday, because they'd seen the Friday go off in such a peaceful manner. And I think the other thing that's got to be said is, I know somebody died, and I'm not taking away from that, and I'm certainly not condoning anyone mowing into crowds in a car, if that's what did happen.
If that's what happened, because there's alternative evidence coming out now.
But what I will say is, Antifa and the left have got a lot of gall coming out and trying to play the victim, because for the last couple of years, they've not just been attacking the alt-right, they've been attacking anyone who has voiced any opposition to mass immigration or to the fostering of these refugees who are pouring into Europe. They've attacked Trump supporters, they've attacked UKIP supporters. So they've not just been attacking the alt-right, they've been attacking anyone they disagree with. So now for them to play the victim, to me, that just sticks in my throat a bit, because it's very, very disingenuous for the people who have been causing the trouble for the last couple of years to now start crying these crocodile tears when they've had a little bit of comeback on it.
There's something to be said for that too, because they started this whole, it's okay to punch a Nazi thing, and then you get to the point of, okay, well, what's a Nazi? Oh, it's the far right. Oh, well, what's the far right? And you just start naming off nationalist viewpoints that most people on the right share, and suddenly anybody who's slightly right of center, or even a centrist, can be considered a Nazi because they've hollowed out that center point, haven't they?
Well, that's a really important thing to say, and that leads me on to something else, because what is a Nazi? And one of the things that's really annoyed me about this is the left and Antifa, they really do call anyone who is right of what I would call a neocon. And by a neocon, I mean someone who's quote unquote a conservative, but still supports mass immigration, still supports foreign wars, still supports multiculturalism, and acts all offended when somebody suggests that mass immigration hasn't been good for the UK, Europe, or the Western world in general. So they attack anyone that they call a Nazi, and as I said, they brand anyone a Nazi who's further right than a neocon. And when they do this, that should be getting people worried, because they're not just referring to people like David Duke or Richard Spencer or Matthew Heimbach. They're referring to anyone with an alternative viewpoint. But unfortunately, some people who are on this alternative right, people like Gavin McInnes and Paul Joseph Watson, they've been using this to virtue signal, attack the alt-right, but they don't understand. They're not going to win over the left by virtue signaling and by attacking people like Richard Spencer. And if they think that by parroting some of this sort of left-wing mantra and by using their terminology and by trying to form some form of compromise with them, that they're going to get anywhere, they really don't know their enemy, because the left won't stop. And if the left tomorrow managed to wipe out everyone to the right of people like Paul Joseph Watson and Gavin McInnes, believe me, the next people they'd be wiping out would be Paul Joseph Watson and Gavin McInnes. Because the left have no shame and they have no boundaries. And it's very interesting to see after Charlottesville just how people on the right are playing the left's game by becoming fragmented and attacking one another. You see, when the left do something which isn't particularly good, or is downright offensive, destructive, or even absolutely morally reprehensible, other people on the left still don't attack those people. For example, take a look at what happened in Hamburg. You've got these massive riots, tens of millions of pounds worth of damage, shops being looted, public property being destroyed. Yet, did you see people like Jeremy Corbyn? Did you see people on the left-wing pundits like the Young Turks attacking these people?
They never denounce their crazies, do they?
No. And not only that, but in the UK, we've actually had government ministers who in the past have been exposed for having links with groups like the Paedophile Information Exchange, and the left still don't attack them. The left still don't turn their fire on their own. They just keep quiet and close ranks. And that's how they win. That is how they win, because they aim all their fire at us on the so-called right. Yet, when something happens that involves us, we are so quick to fragment and so quick to attack our own.
And they know that about us, don't they?
Yeah. And it's a vain attempt to please people who you're never going to please, people who are never going to like you. And you see, these alt-right commentators, they can attack anyone on the right wing. They can call people like Richard Spencer Nazis and decry them. But the left still aren't going to vote for them. The left still aren't going to agree with them. They're still not going to say, you know, we've got some things in common, let's have dialogue. Because that's not how the left work. The left are relentless in their push for degeneracy, their attack on Western civilization. And they won't stop until they've reduced everything to ash. And essentially, until people on the alt-right realize that, until these conservatives realise that adopting this defensive strategy and constantly trying to play by the fair rules, because obviously they're not fair, laid out by their enemies on the left, exactly, they're never going to win. It's like if you go into a game of, let's say, chess, if you and I play a game of chess, but I keep redefining the rules and you agree to only play by my rules, there can only be one outcome. I will win, because I just keep redefining the rules. And whilst people on the alt-right or conservative pundits keep playing by the rules laid out by the left-wing media, laid out by the establishment, laid out by the deep state, and laid out by the far left, they're never ever going to win. They're just going to keep getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back until everything they originally stood for is eroded and destroyed in front of their eyes.
Now, there was a section in your book that discussed the perfect society, which you define as a homogeneous group of people who come together with shared morals, shared values, and wish to move forward as one, working together for the good of the community, whilst not forgetting the rights and importance of the individual. This community cohesion relies on a shared sense of consciousness held by the people who make up society. How do you think we can best achieve this in the future?
Well, it's something we used to have. That's the important thing to note, first of all. We did have this. We had these wonderful communities where people looked out for each other, where they knew everyone on their own streets, where you didn't just know your immediate neighbours, but you knew people on the streets over from you. You knew where they worked, you knew the names of their children, you saw them at weekends, you saw them in the church, in the pub, and there was a sense of community, and that community has been lost. But the only way we can really rebuild that is by engaging with the people around us. And to do that, we must engage in what's known as community politics, or quite simply community building, where we, as pillars of the community, we as nationalists, come forward and we attempt to spearhead initiatives in our local areas that help local people, where we get together and we engage in things that are going to bring people back together. So we reform those bonds, so we relearn the ways of the past. And you've got to remember, every Sunday morning without fail, churches would be absolutely packed. And everyone from the community would be in church. They would all talk to each other, know each other's names. They would all greet each other. And ultimately, that built these strong bonds. Now the churches are empty. They're finished. They're gone. And the stuff being pushed in the churches is often as degenerate as the stuff being pushed on the television. I mean, the whole church system, the whole system of sort of Protestant religion has been completely warped and taken over to push a destructive message. But if you look at that community and the way it used to operate, you see why we used to stand together. You see why we had a community where everyone could leave their doors unlocked on an evening, why they could let their children play out in the street, because it was a high trust society. It was a society where you knew that you could trust in your friends and neighbours. And they weren't just friends and neighbours. They were seen almost like an extended family. And the only way we can go about rebuilding that is by engaging with people. And at the moment, we're atomized. And one of the reasons we're atomized is because we're so intent on carrying out solitary pursuits. We watch television, we sit on the computer, we sit on our tablets, and we don't engage with people. So a good idea to get people together is to get involved in local charity drives. Get involved in a local bake sale. Try to get people out doing things together like our ancestors used to do. And you can also campaign on local issues, which again brings people together. If there's a mosque opening in your local area, you can oppose that. You can go knock door to door, seek signatures, get a petition together to stop that mosque opening. Engage with your neighbours, get to know them. Get a community forum going, start a neighbourhood watch. You can do all these things, but the important thing is whatever you do, you're bringing people out of their homes and you're getting them to have face-to-face interactions with people like them. You're getting them to build bonds that we've lost. You're getting them to engage with people around them so that they don't just feel they're isolated in their area. All of a sudden, they've got friends. They've got people they can rely on. They know the names of everyone on their street again. Because believe me, these Muslim communities have sprung up in cities like Bradford, Rotherham, Burnley, Oldham. They do operate in that manner. They do all go to the mosque on a Friday. They do all know the names of their neighbours. And believe me, if one of them starts an MOT business or a motor repair business, everyone in that community will use that business, and they'll all make sure that their money goes to people within their community, stays within their community, and that's why they're strong. But we're all too quick to turn our backs on our neighbours, but we don't want to do that. We need to support local businesses. That's another way that you can help people. Rather than going to your big supermarkets, go to your local butcher, your local baker. Keep your towns and villages alive. Make sure that our money and our effort goes into our community, and make sure that you engage with people. If you're in a shop, speak to people. Don't use small things. Don't use the automated till systems. Don't order your shopping online. It's all about engagement. And even the smallest things like we're talking about now, like shopping in your local butchers rather than going to a big supermarket or ordering your food online, those small human interactions are what built our communities, are what built village and town life in the past. And those are things that we've forgotten. But if we are to succeed, and if we are to flourish, and if we are to have a European rebirth, they are things that we as a people must re-engage in. And believe me, again, to wrap this point up, in these Islamic areas, everyone shops at their local shops. They don't go to Tesco's, they don't go to Sainsbury's, they don't use the big supermarkets. They will have their own Islamic supermarket, and they will go there and they will buy products, and they'll speak to their neighbours, and they'll speak to their community leaders, and they'll know the names of the sons and daughters of the people who live on the same street as them. And that kind of community cohesion is what makes them so powerful. And when they stand together as a community, that is what allows them to wield disproportionate power in our electoral system. And that's one of the reasons Not the entire reason, but one of the reasons politicians pander to them. Because when you are a cohesive community that wields such power and can vote as a bloc, politicians have to pander to you and they have to give you what you want.
Excellent advice and a very good point. Now, you lived in the United Kingdom. I lived there myself. I saw lots of the multiculturalism stuff going on and noticed that the cities I went to didn't have a huge demographic of white English walking around. Even where I worked, there were lots of kids and I hardly ever saw a white face. I noticed this even though I wasn't, as we say in the alt-right, red-pilled at that time. Are more British starting to wake up to this? Are you seeing that around you at all?
Well, it's really interesting you asked that question because we spoke briefly before we sort of started recording this, and you said you were in Leicester, and it's coincidentally I was born in Leicester and I grew up there, and Leicester has got the dubious honour of being the first majority non-white city in the UK, but it's not going to be the last. And since then, London and Birmingham, so that's the biggest and the second biggest city in the UK, are now majority non-white. And yes, I do see people waking up to it. But although they're waking up, their response isn't to organise because they don't have a community, as we've just discussed. And really the response of the majority of sort of white European people is simply to leave. They just up and go. So London, you've seen this incredible white flight where everyone's gone either south to the southeast if they've got lots of money, or if they've got not quite as much money, they go to Essex just to the north, or they flee it entirely and they go and, they sell their house because it's in London, it's worth a lot more, and they go up to somewhere like Scotland or Wales or start a new life out in the countryside. So instead of actually combating the problem, unfortunately, they're just fleeing. And that in itself creates a huge problem because you can't run forever. Britain's a very small country. It's very overpopulated. It's pushing, I think, around 70 million people in Britain now.
That's a tiny island for that many people.
It is. And last year alone, Theresa May let in 650,000 immigrants. That's the one she knows about. And she admitted also that they think that 200,000, they think 200,000, that's their estimation, came in illegally. So that's 850,000 people in a single year.
Do they count people from the EU as immigrants or just those coming from outside the EU?
I think they count all. That's
okay.
all. Yeah. So that's a massive wave of people coming in to the UK. A massive wave. And they're completely out of control when it comes to illegal immigration as well. And they're always talking about giving people amnesty. So it's creating this huge demographic change. And people who are engaging in white flight, people who are just running away and saying, I've had it here, London's gone, so we're moving, we're going to Norfolk, or we're going to Essex, or we're going down south somewhere in a sleepy little village by the coast. You can't run forever. There's limited space, there's finite space. And that's the problem, because people who have come to, I moved away from Leicester and I live in Leeds now. I came up here to study and I stayed in Leeds. But I've seen Leeds change so dramatically over the time I've been here. The demographic change here is startling. When I used to stand for council elections in areas near the city centre, the wards I was standing in were sort of 85, 90% white. Now you walk down those same streets and you don't see a white face. And it is scary how it's happening. And people are waking up to that. I mean, people come up to me all the time. People speak to me, obviously, because I'm relatively well known for my opinions. I do engage with a lot of people. And people will speak to me honestly because they know that, they can speak to me honestly, and they have these fears. But unfortunately, as I said earlier, they don't really know what to do about it because there is no organised resistance in the UK. And there certainly isn't a cohesive community to form any form of fight back against this. So people feel very lost. And ultimately, their only sort of logical way out of this is to keep running. And they're very short-termist in many ways because they think, well, I'm going to get out of this and my children will get out of this. But their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren won't get out of this because sooner or later, as I said, there'll be nowhere left to run. And their descendants will pay the price for their inaction.
That's scary to think, because I don't think they were giving forethought to how it's going to affect their grandkids. But I think a lot of that is due to maybe not being racially aware. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we as a people have been deracinated. We don't think on a racial level, and that's very, very unfortunate. And you see this when you compare us to, say, the African American community. You look at them and they have a real sense of race. They have a real sense of racial pride, of racial belonging, of standing up for their people. I mean, look at the term Black Lives Matter. You know, that's parroted everywhere, and black people all over do identify with that. They identify with the idea of being black. They identify with the idea of being part of a cohesive racial group that wants to get the best for their community, that wants to use their power as a cohesive group, as a cohesive voice, to influence the political landscape for their betterment, to get a better deal for themselves. Whereas white people, we've had that beaten out of us. So what you'll see is what you see in Charlottesville. We turn up, we chant, white lives matter. We chant, we will not be replaced. Well, there's nothing really shocking or offensive about that. Nothing at all. White lives, surely they do matter also. Surely white people have a right to exist. White people have a right not to be replaced in the lands of their forefathers. And, you know, ultimately, this is our house. This is the house of our forefathers. We built these places. We built these countries. We built this magnificent civilization. We have a right not to be replaced. But when we start saying that, you see so many whites either do one of two things. Number one, they react in absolute horror, as if, you know, they've just seen the devil himself come out of the ground, or they act with, you know, sort of, oh, well, I kind of know what you're thinking, but, oh, it's so shameful to think this, and I've got to keep my head down because I don't want to lose my job, and I don't want to get called a racist. And these people who should be agreeing with us, they're so whipped, they're so cooked, they're so desperate not to be called a word. And that, to me, is something which I don't really understand, because I read so many historical accounts of our forefathers who literally risked death to free Europe from Islamic invasion. And you've got people now, we're not asking them to risk death, we're at worst asking them to run the gauntlet of being called a word. But it almost seems like they're more scared to be called racist than they are to see their children grow up as a minority. And this takes us back to sort of some of the people we were talking about earlier, people like Gavin McInnes. You know, he's so desperate to prove that he's a liberal. I mean, in his last podcast, his last little video on YouTube, he says, I'm, you know, socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And he's so eager to try and please those who hate him. He's so eager to try and please those who are actively destroying Western civilization. He's so eager to prove that, you know, he's not one of the big, bad, racist Nazis, that it's cringeworthy. I was actually cringing watching him come out with this, because he's trying to please the very people who are trying to destroy the thing he claims he wants to save, which is Western civilization. He claims himself in his funkily named organization, the Proud Boys. You know, he says West is best. West is best. But you're pandering to the people.
Chauvinism, yeah.
Yeah, you're pandering to the people who want to destroy the West. I don't understand that. You see, you know, if I've got a castle and there's people who are trying to knock that castle down, I'm not pandering to those people. Ultimately, I want those people, you know, for want of a better word, politically smashing. I want them finishing. I want them off the landscape, because I want to preserve my castle. And Western civilization is our castle. It's our monumental achievement. It's the thing that our forefathers fought, died, and toiled for. And now we're trying to cravenly please those who want to tear it down. And really, we've got to look at ourselves and say, seriously here, are we that scared? Are the mental chains that have been placed upon us so heavy and unbreakable that we are really going to bow our heads out of the fear of being called a racist? Now, for the record, I am not a racist. I don't hate anyone. I genuinely don't. Everyone's got their place in this world, and the world's a better place for genuine diversity. And genuine diversity means that there are Africans, that there are Latinos, that there are Chinese, Japanese, and Indians. But those people exist in their rightful place, which I'm afraid isn't in Europe, and it's not in North America. These are our countries, the Western world is ours, and I'm happy for the black man to flourish in Africa. I'm happy for the Indian to flourish in India, or for the Chinaman to flourish in China. But I don't want these people flooding into my country and turning it into a third world hellhole. And the key point, the thing we must always remember, is the people who didn't build mighty castles, colosseums, aqueducts, and a wonderful civilization aren't going to come to the West and enrich a civilization that did build all those wonderful things.
Do you guys ever get this? Because this is what I always hear. I got a comment on one of my older YouTube videos about this just this morning, actually, where, well, you can say whites built it, but you built it on the backs of slaves. Well, yeah, you whites built it, but you ousted Native Americans, therefore you don't have any claim to this land. They say that as they're typing it out on their laptop that was built by white men, or their iPhone that was built by white men. And the inability to reflect on that and realize you're utilizing everything that whites built for you while it's condemning the people who fought for this land in the first place. I just don't get this kind of doublethink.
It wasn't slaves who built our mighty civilization. It was our forefathers. And I'm going to make
that's like giving credit to the hammer for building the Library of Congress. If
you look at immigration into Europe, it wasn't black slaves who built Europe. They didn't build the Sistine Chapel. They didn't build the Brandenburg Gate. They didn't build St. Paul's Cathedral or York Minster. They weren't the ones who built the mighty castles. They weren't the ones who invented electricity or the motor car. Hell, they didn't even invent the wheel.
Yes,
we exported
Native
the wheel.
Americans didn't even have the wheel, people.
We are the ones who made the world what it is. But what's more, due to our benevolence, we actually exported our wonderful inventions, our healthcare, the clean running water, the written languages to the rest of the world. We gave these gifts to everyone else,
right?
And if these white liberals hate all these mod cons so much, if they hate the smartphones, if they hate the microprocessors, if they hate the petrol and diesel cars, if they hate the televisions and the internet, why don't they go and live in Haiti or Liberia? Why don't they go and live somewhere else and experience the enriching life of living with these people in their native homelands? And they're never going to do that, because ultimately these people are hypocrites. People like J.K. Rowling, I believe she's got a house.
I can't stand her anymore.
I don't know how many bedrooms. Somebody told me she lives in a house with 18 bedrooms. So if that happens to be false and she doesn't actually have 18 bedrooms, don't destroy me in the comments. But she has a lot more bedrooms than probably anyone listening to this show. But despite her love for immigrants and refugees, she isn't letting them occupy all those spare bedrooms. She doesn't want them living in her mansion. She's got millions and millions from selling awful books about, some stupid little effeminate wizard. But she isn't using those millions and millions of pounds to help refugees. No, she wants people like you, I, the listeners to this show, to have to live next door to these refugees. And she wants us to dig deep. She wants it to be our tax money that pays for these people to live on our street while she lives in her wonderfully safe 18-bedroom mansion, out in the countryside where she's never going to see any other problems.
And
because
sorry, go ahead.
She's a hypocrite. She's just another champagne socialist. Because all of these people who are committed to the destruction of the white race, who are at the top of the tree when it comes to enforcing multiculturalism, they are the ones living behind security fences. They're the ones living in houses that people like you and I could only dream of affording. It's like when you hear these jerks who live in an all-white sort of area of London where they have private security patrolling their streets, and a townhouse, which is essentially not a huge property, is worth roughly 10, 12, 15 million. But they're telling the people living in packed apartment blocks who are running the gauntlet of getting robbed when they come home from the store every night because they're culturally enriched by their neighbours. They're telling them that they should swallow this and embrace it. It's hypocrisy on an absolutely unprecedented scale.
I think those are the people that drive me the craziest, or like you said, the champagne socialists. I run into so many of them myself, and plenty of like white millennials, maybe in their early 20s, who buy into that sort of rhetoric just on a constant basis, and they just try to get to the kids first. But one of the main criticisms I've heard about white identity or ethno-nationalism is that whites aren't made to be tribal, or that we've never been tribal. I think I heard Black Pigeon Speaks saying that it goes against the grain of white history to be tribal, and we'll never achieve that. We've never had it. We've always supposedly striven for individualism. Do you think that's a valid argument?
No, that's complete garbage.
Thank you.
Complete garbage. But the thing is, I'm going to qualify this for the benefit of the pigeon. This guy does not know what he's talking about. You see, it is true that our civilization was full of many, many remarkable individuals. And many, many remarkable individuals have existed and shaped our civilization. But all these remarkable individuals, they had plans, they had ideas, they had schemes, they had designs. But on their own, as individuals, those schemes, plans, and designs would have simply remained drawings and plans and schematics. Nothing would ever have come of them. It took a cohesive society, it took a community, it took a tribe that surrounded those individuals to put those magnificent and mighty plans into action. But what's more, it took a cohesive community, it took a tribe, it took a society to protect those magnificent achievements once they had been built and once they'd been put into action. And anyone that says the opposite is not thinking straight. The Colosseum in Rome is one of the most magnificent achievements the world has ever known. And of course, it was down to a few spectacular and outstanding individuals who planned that, who designed it. But it wasn't built by them. It was built by the community, the civilization, and the nation around them that pulled together and worked as a group to see those plans become a magnificent reality. And once they built that Colosseum, it took that nation an awful lot to protect it and to keep it standing. And that's how civilizations work. You see, individuals that come up with great ideas but just stand as a lone individual and aren't supported by a group or a community, their achievements are never realized and their genius is lost to the sands of time. It takes a cohesive community and a tribe to acknowledge their outstanding individuals and to make sure that those individuals are honored by putting their designs and dreams into practice. And people who say the opposite simply aren't thinking clearly. They're not thinking correctly. We acted on a tribal level and we came together as a community and we built things thousands of years ago that are still inspiring people to this day. And anyone that says the opposite is simply virtue signaling, or again, trying to win over people on the left, or trying to outfox the left with, the left's own rhetoric, which ultimately is a nonsense. We have to be honest. And ultimately, we have to adopt the pride other races have. We have to adopt a pride in ourselves, just like they have. Just like black people say we're proud to be black, just like Latinos are proud of their heritage. We have to be proud of the things that we have done, and we have to be proud of what our communities, tribes, and nations have done in the past. And ultimately, if we wish to succeed, and if we wish to strive forward, and if we wish to succeed as a people and to continue to exist, we have to adopt that tribal community mentality to make sure that our achievements carry on being honoured and they are not lost to the sands of time.
One of the things that gives me hope is when I see Generation Z really rejecting a lot of this multiculturalism and globalist type of ideas. I see it online in quite comical ways. Have you observed this? What do you think?
I have seen that. I mean, Generation Z, or the millennials that came before them, or all of these people, I'm kind of a bit lost with the youth because I see a huge polarization. And whilst I do see people increasingly adopting our mantra and our rhetoric, I do see people going the other way. But what I see absolutely disappearing is the middle ground.
Yep, it's hollowing out.
At one time, politics was all about capturing that middle ground. It was about being a centrist. But the centrists are disappearing, and people are either going to the quote-unquote far left or coming our way. And that is something I do see hope with, because I think it is natural for people to seek out a sense of identity. And when they're denied a sense of identity, they either spiral out of control and become lost, or they search for that identity because they feel something is missing, almost like a spiritual hole inside of them, and they seek something greater. And I really do like to see young people turning to us, young people seeking out truth. And I think that's something that the alternative media, something that, these YouTube videos, they really do help to get young people involved in alternative politics, because for once, young people aren't just being presented with BBC, ITV, Sky News, Fox, CNN, NBC. They can now come and find an alternative voice. And I welcome these young people. And, I urge all people out there, especially the young ones, listen to alternative media, read alternative sources, buy books that aren't available in your local library or aren't, given out at your local school, and educate yourself. And most notably, if your teachers and if the mainstream media are desperate for you not to hear something, for you not to discuss something, it's probably because it's true. Go out and investigate those things. And at the very least, because I'm a fair person, at the very least, listen to the other side of the debate. Because I'm open to always listening to different sides of every debate and making my own mind up. And believe me, I'm not telling you what to believe, but if you go and read a book by somebody like David Duke, if you go and watch a video by somebody like Richard Spencer, if you go and watch alternative media by people like yourself or Tara McCarthy or the many other, really quality YouTubers out there, people like, Stefan Molyneux, he's waking a lot of people up. Go and listen to that, and you will see that we are the people who not only are telling the truth, but we're the reasonable ones, because we are willing to debate, open up discourse. We're not the ones trying to shut other people down. We're not the ones trying to restrict freedom of speech, because we know that we don't need to do that to defeat our enemies, because we have something on our side that they don't, and that's the truth.
Now, I saw from your Twitter that you're very into physical fitness, as am I. Why do you think it's important for nationalists in particular to exercise and be healthy?
Because nationalism, the big difference between nationalism and the left is an emotional hug box, based around equality. And equality is a nonsense. There's never been equality, and there's never going to be equality, because people aren't equal. We're all different. And part of being a nationalist is reaching for excellence. It's reaching for something more. It's having pride in your people. And the first step to having pride in your people is having pride in yourself. And you can't have pride in yourself if you're a mess. And being physically fit, being physically active, going out there and reaching for personal excellence is something every young person should do. I train at the gym 3 times a week. I do a spinning class. I run a 10K every Sunday. I go out on my mountain bike. And believe me, not only does that make you excellent, not only does it make you fit and healthy, but it makes you feel fantastic inside. And what I mean by that is so many people today, oh, I'm depressed, I'm down, I sit in, I eat this junk food, I drink, I smoke weed. Nah, none of those things are going to make you feel good in the long term. I'll tell you what makes you feel good. Doing a 21-mile bike ride. And this is not rhetoric. You can look this up. It's on my Facebook. Add me on Facebook. Look at my Twitter. A 21-mile bike ride in torrential rain through a forest makes you feel good. Because believe me, there's times when you're doing that your body, your mind, every part of you is saying, stop, this is killing me, this is killing me. But when you finish it and you've achieved that and you look back and you can put that up, a picture of you holding your bike above your head saying, I beat the forest bike ride in torrential rain and I did it in 3 hours and 15 minutes, which is a new personal best. That feeling of achievement, that natural high, is something that can't be matched by any drugs, any alcohol, any amount of chocolate biscuits or, confectionaries or treats or junk food. It can't be matched by sitting in and playing Call of Duty and sitting on the phone or on a tablet bemoaning how terrible your life is. It just feels fantastic. And it is not just food for your body. It's not just nourishment and goodness for your body. It's also nourishment for your soul, for your spirit. And also, being out in nature is something that's so important. So many people don't have that connection with the natural world anymore. And believe me, if you feel bad about yourself, if you feel terrible, get up like I do on a Sunday morning at 6:30, 7 o'clock and go for a 10K run through the woods as the sun's coming up. Hear the birds tweeting, smell that freshness in the air, feel the sun beating down on the back of your neck, the rays breaking through the lines of the trees. And that is a fantastic experience. That gets your day off to a much better start than lying in bed, playing on your phone. It really does get you going. And it's a sense of achievement. And believe me, when you've done a run like that and you get in and you notice you've knocked 2 minutes off last week's time, you feel fantastic. It's a real achievement. And it raises you up. And when you start to feel better about yourself, when you start to feel like you've got real pride in who you are, everything in your life comes together. You go for a job interview and you've got that pride in yourself, you're going to get that job. You walk into that club and that bar and you feel pride in yourself, you're going to have much more confidence about talking to that woman you've been looking at. When you go into the office on a morning and there's that girl that you really wanted to say hi to and she stood there at the coffee machine, and you feel great and you've put on your shirt and you've noticed you've not got a belly, you don't look chubby. In fact, that shirt hugs your figure and you walk up to her and you're like, hi, you'll feel confident, she'll see you're confident, and you get results. Confidence in yourself and a love for yourself helps you in every aspect of your life, and it helps you achieve the things you want to achieve. It helps you get somewhere. And once you've got that pride in yourself, have a pride in your people, because that's what everything's about. It's about being proud, and that's what's been stolen from white people. And this journey, it begins with you. It begins, those first few steps are the steps you take for self-improvement. And once we're better people, and once we come together as a community of better people, we can reach for the stars. And that's what we did do. We as a people were so excellent, we went into space. We reached for the stars. We didn't just look up there and go, wow, aren't those constellations magnificent? We dared to dream. And then we put those dreams into a stunning reality. And we did that by reaching for a kind of excellence that is unmatched the world over. And what I'm saying to you people is, embrace that excellence, because it runs in your veins. The blood of the people who built the Colosseum, the blood of the people who sent men to the moon, the blood of the people that invented electricity, the wheel, the motor car, the people who stood at Thermopylae, at Rorke's Drift, at the Siege of Vienna, it runs in your veins. That excellence is part of your DNA. It's part of your makeup. So embrace it and be the best you can. And once you are, believe me, the things that you want will come to you.
Now, how do you not have a career as a motivational speaker? I gotta know this, because that was amazing. Do you do motivational speeches?
If anyone wants to book me, I'm open for motivational speeches. No, I've given many speeches at nationalist meetings. I'm obviously very passionate about what I speak about, and I'm very passionate about helping young people achieve their best. Because believe me, and this is something that I'm very open about. I'm open about me. I'm not going to hide things from you. I've been through some very bad times. I was arrested when I was 24 for making speeches against Muslim groomers, and I spent 2 years on trial looking at spending 7 years.
Wait, you said you were arrested for bad things. I've yet to hear the bad thing. You were speaking about
bad things in terms of length of time in prison.
Okay.
7 years for making speeches against Muslim grooming gangs, because I was one of the people who was at the forefront of exposing Muslim grooming. Long before Tommy Robinson, long before Rotherham, long before Telford, I was one of the people at the forefront of the movement.
So he stole your thunder, did he? Did Tommy steal your thunder?
He has done. But he's a brave guy, and he's at the forefront of that. So more power to him. And the more people he wakes up and brings our way, the better. So
Absolutely.
I don't believe me. I don't punch right. I aim my venom at the people on the far left, at the anarchists, the Antifa. That's who I'm aiming my fire at. But I faced all these problems, and I've made mistakes along the way, and people know the documentaries I was involved in, the exposés on me, things that have been humiliating, things that have been not high points of my life, things that have cost me dearly. I've said things when I was younger that I might not necessarily be proud of, and I'm not going to sit here and laugh and joke about them and give glib remarks about them and try to pretend they didn't happen, or airbrush them out of my past. They happened. I'm not proud of them. And believe me, I've lost things because of them. I've lost women I loved. I've lost career opportunities. I've created problems, obviously for my family, who, have had to answer for my actions in the past. But what I'm saying to you young people is, if you take advice from someone like me who's trodden this path, you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. You can embrace the best of the things that I did. You can embrace the better things that I've achieved, and you can dodge the pitfalls that unfortunately tripped me up along the way. And you can go on to be a much better person than I am. You can go on to achieve so much more than I have. You can go on to live a good life. You can go on to find a wonderful partner and have children. You can have a wonderful career, and you don't have to end up on trial. You don't have to fall into these mistakes. You don't have to be humiliated on national television. You can be a better person. You can be far more than me if you listen to me. And by embracing the best of my message, and by embracing the things that I, as a 36-year-old man, am saying to you, you don't have to have the baptism of fire that I did. And that's the message I want to give to young people. I've made mistakes. Learn from those mistakes. Learn from the mistakes of an older nationalist. Because there's so many, believe me, there's so many nationalists out there who've made mistakes. And some of them are bitter, and some of them will tell you to do stupid things. Some of them will live through you as a young person by encouraging stupidity, by encouraging madness, by pushing you down a line where they might live through you again. I'm not one of those people. I don't want you making mistakes. I don't want to see you as a 36-year-old, 37, 38, 39, 40-year-old man who doesn't have a wife, doesn't have kids, who's been on trial, who's lived through those stresses. I want the next generation of nationalists to be better than my generation. And what's more, I want the next generation of nationalists to achieve more than my generation did, because I want you to set our people free. I want you to create a brave new world that is fit for our descendants, but is also fit to make our ancestors proud. And I'm behind you all the way. And when I say I'm behind you all the way, that's not just empty rhetoric. That's not just garbage. I speak to a lot of young people, and a lot of young people reach out to me. They message me on Facebook. They message me on Twitter. They ask me for help. And believe me, I met a young lad the other week who, wanted to meet up, wanted to talk about things. And if you need help, if you're in a dark place, I'm not going to turn my back on you. Anyone out there who feels the same way about the world as I do, but needs help, needs guidance, needs a bit of advice for fitness, even if you want to come out and try some fitness, do some mountain biking with some of us older lads, we'll take you there. We're there to help. I'm there to help. This isn't just, a motivational speech. This is me holding my hand out to the next generation and saying, come on, let's get this going. Let's do this right. I'm here to help. Let's make a better future for our people.
I will have links in the description, so if you guys want to find your Facebook page and the Twitter, you'll be able to do that to get in touch. So one part of your book, just to loop this back to Charlottesville real quick, because this I found fascinating, because so few people are willing to talk about this. One part of your book that I really loved was your description of the Hollywood Nazi. And I've often been a fan of revisionist history. I think I've listened to every World War II revisionist video or radio show that Red Ice ever did. So can you tell my viewers more about maybe what the difference is between the Hollywoodized version of a Nazi that's being used by the media as a tool in regards to Charlottesville versus what you would say National Socialism actually is?
Well, again, I don't want to be seen to be punching right.
Right, of course.
But what I'm going to say is this. If you look at what National Socialism was in the 1930s, National Socialism, Germany, if you said what defined that movement, what characterized it more than anything, it was order, it was discipline, and it was cohesiveness. People looked alike, they acted alike, and they marched in unison. And everything they did was clean cut. Everything they did was measured. Everything they did was based on a sense of being one, being a greater organism, having a community consciousness. And that order and discipline followed everything they did. And the ultimate manifestation of that order and discipline was the Nuremberg rallies. Watch Triumph of the Will. That is order, that is discipline. Hundreds of thousands of men lined up in perfect order. Everything was pristine, everything was perfect. And the people conformed. They looked alike, they acted alike, and they stepped together. And the world looked in awe at these people. These people held the whole world in awe. And you look at that, and then you look at the Hollywood Nazi. You look at people who are pot-bellied, covered in tattoos, lurching back and forward at a rock concert, drinking copious amounts of lager, sometimes smoking weed. And you look at that, and you think, now, if you take away the flags at the back of the stage of these rock concerts, if you take away the tattoos of certain symbols, and if you change the lyrics, those events would have more in common with a degenerate leftist rock festival. Mm-hmm. They'd have more in common with Woodstock.
Yeah, I was just
thinking they would have
Woodstock.
More in common with the madness of the mainstream. You wouldn't look at those events minus the flags and the symbols and the lyrics and say they had anything in common with the Nuremberg rallies. You wouldn't say, you know what, that's a modern version of Nuremberg. You just be like, God, that's degenerate. And then somebody say, oh, but look at these symbols. Well, if you're doing those kind of things in front of those symbols, if you're holding a boozy rock concert where people are smoking weed and, rolling about in their own vomit, and they're covered from head to toe in tattoos, and they've got big fat bellies, and none of them are conforming. In fact, they're all wearing their own individualist clothing, which has all been modified to make them look slightly different from the person next to them. That's got nothing to do with National Socialism. It's not a modern day embodiment of National Socialism. It's a perversion of National Socialism. And it's been created by the media. It's been created by films like American History X, like Romper Stomper. It's been pushed in the tabloid press. It's been pushed as a way of basically perverting National Socialism. And so people look and think, are they Nazis? Are they Nazis? Oh, that's Nazism, is it? But that never was Nazism. And believe me, if you want me to hit the nail on the head with this, and I'm going to actually, so I'm not saying if you want me to, I'm going to say what I think. If you took these beer-bellied, tattooed, drunken, sort of, for want of a better word, thugs, and you place them at the Nuremberg rally, what do you think Hitler and the SS would have thought of them? Because I'm telling you, those people would have been straight in the camps. And, that's it. It was, here's your free train ticket.
After the
it
oven.
takes you to the east. You won't be coming back. It's a one-way ticket. You're not coming back. Goodbye. You can sew some clothes for the rest of your life.
Yes.
That's it. That's quite simply it. Because these people are not a modern-day representation of National Socialism. They're a perversion of it. And again, if people find that offensive, I don't want anyone to come back at me with an insult, like, oh, we'll punch your head in for saying that, or you're just a shill.
They do that anyway, yeah.
Argue the point with me, because the point isn't arguable. There's a whole chapter in my book on this. I flesh this out a lot more, and the book is free to download from www.thefallofwesternman.com. It's free to download. You can also buy it in hardback and paperback. But again, I'm not in this for the money, so it's free. Take it for free, read it, and I'm happy to hear feedback. But the point is, if you're listening to this, and if you find this offensive, maybe you should look at yourself and say, you know what? I do think I subscribe to that ideology, but I'm not honouring that ideology. I do subscribe to what these men stood for, but I'm not really honouring their memory. And, these people, whether you like them or not, and I'm not saying I'm a National Socialist, I always describe myself as a nationalist, but I watched a documentary on the Battle of Stalingrad, and it really upset me. Young Germans who were 18, 19, 20, writing letters to their families saying, this is going to be my last stand. We're down to our last box of bullets. This is the end for us. But Mum, Dad, I want you to know that I did Germany proud. And you look at what those men stood for, those boys stood for, and you look at the sacrifice they made and the living hell they went into for their race and nation. Really, if you want to honour those people, if you do classify yourself as a National Socialist and you want to honour those brave young men who died in the ice and snow in horrific conditions, if you really want to honour them, please do it in the right way. Don't do it by spitting on what they stood for or perverting it and making it into some sick, twisted, vile media effigy of what it really was. If you want to stand for an ideology that at its core was order, discipline, cohesiveness, standing together and working as a community, then embrace those virtues. Do not spit all over them.
Well said. Speaking of your book, I wanted to talk to you about books for a little while because I'm a writer myself. I had a couple writer questions to ask you. What writers do you think over the years have really helped to form your worldview, and who do you admire?
Well, I must say, and everyone knows I work a lot with this man, so I'm not just saying this, but I recently listened to David Duke's My Awakening. Now, I don't get a lot of time to read, but I listen to an awful lot of content. I work as a designer. That's a well-known fact. I'm a graphic designer. And I listen, obviously, when I'm designing, I can listen all day while I design. And I listen to David Duke's My Awakening. It's absolutely phenomenal. And the way he reads it, I know this sounds a bit cheesy, but he reads it as if he's reading you a bedtime story. It's almost like he's in the room, and it's not monotonous. It's not, I got up in the morning and then we went to the rally. It's like, and I got up in the morning and we went to the rally. It's inspirational. It's like he's speaking not into a microphone, not into a recording, but it's like he's speaking directly to you. You can look that up on archive.org, and it really is worth listening to. It's full of information, and he also intersperses the information with really, really good anecdotes from his own life, his own experiences. It's fantastic. Another book I wholeheartedly recommend. It put some people off because of who wrote it, but it was George Lincoln Rockwell's White Power.
I like George Lincoln Rockwell. Yeah. I do.
And also, if you've got kids, which sadly I don't, but if I did,
work on
I'd
that.
be reading.
I talked to you about this before. You work on that.
I'm working as hard as I can, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But The Tale of the Ducks and the Hens, that's magnificent, and it really does speak volumes about Rockwell's intelligence and his intellect, that he can really distill the problems of our people down to a fairy tale. It really is a phenomenal book. Those two things influence me absolutely greatly, real great influences, and I say seek those out. Another thing that I've really enjoyed is I've got a collection of writings from Attack and National Vanguard by Dr. William Pierce. Again, a lot more difficult going than David Duke's work or George Lincoln Rockwell's. It's not really written in the same sort of reader-friendly way, but wealth of information, really, really good, really, really good quality. And if you want a silly pick just for amusement, as a child I really loved the book Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. So if you've not read Fantastic Mr. Fox, go and read it. And I was that kid that I did the same book review every year at school. So I think I've got book reviews from the age of 8 upwards, and they're all on Fantastic Mr. Fox, but I like to think they got better each year.
Mine was always the BFG or Matilda.
I
was
really
obsessed with Matilda.
But I also I like the Twits as well. The Twits was his probably most vulgar but funniest book. I remember reading that in a record time. But Matilda, again, that was a very good book, and maybe somebody could read into something about the witches in that book and the way they hide in plain sight. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything about it. Draw your own conclusions.
Awesome. Yeah, for anybody wondering about George Lincoln Rockwell, he's also got some wonderful YouTube content. It can be a little bit poor audio quality, but there's some great content of George Lincoln Rockwell's speeches all over the net, and I swear you feel like it's from a long time ago, several decades ago, but you feel like he's talking about today when you listen to his content. Are you planning on writing any more books, or are there any projects in the future that you're fired up about?
No projects for me just yet. I'm currently recording my book as an audio book, which is taking a lot more time.
That's a big project, yeah.
It is, but I can say when I wrote my book, I wrote it really to help people, because I saw several young people around me falling into pitfalls, and really the book is kind of a self-help book, and it's there so that when people read it, they understand. It talks about how the mind works and how it's so easy to be seduced by the things that are destroying the West, because all of these things are carefully designed that we enjoy them. They all play on our sense of pleasure. They all play on our pleasure principle. So we want to digest and involve ourselves in these things that seduce us and harm us. I recently did a sort of 28-minute, almost mini documentary on pornography and how that is designed to seduce us, because we all want to have sex. Sex is something we should not be embarrassed about. It's something that it's an evolutionary advantage for sex to feel good, because if it didn't, we wouldn't do it and we wouldn't procreate. That's why it's fun. But what our enemies do is they weaponize sex against us by sexualizing everything and perverting what should be a natural and loving act between two monogamous and committed partners into being a free-for-all that's degenerate, debased, violent, ugly, and utterly sickening and perverse. And they do this as an attack on the family unit. And there's so many things like that in our society that have been weaponized against us. And my book is all about spotting these things and realizing that we give up on short-term hedonistic and individualistic pleasure in order to focus on greater goals that make us excellent. So we give up on sleeping with a different girl every weekend because we want to meet that one person and have a meaningful, spiritual, loving bond that leads to children. And we want to bring those children up as a two-parent family. We give up on going out and drinking and taking pills. So we get up on a Sunday morning and we become physically excellent and we are healthy. We give up on going out and partying. So we get up early in the morning and complete that big project and make our bonus so that we have extra money so we can build or purchase our own house, and then we have a better future for our family. And it's all about noticing where these pitfalls are and giving up on short-term pleasure, denying our animalistic instincts, and becoming the Superman, becoming something more, reaching for excellence. And as I said earlier, by doing that, you will improve yourself, you will have a better life. And once you have that better life, once you've achieved that, you can then strive for a better community, and you can become a pillar of your community, and people will come to you. And then you can be someone who inspires others and fills them with our honourable, decent and upstanding message.
That reminds me so much of that scene from Good Will Hunting when Robin Williams and Matt Damon are sitting there, and he says, yeah, you've maybe been late a few times, but you've never woken up next to a woman and felt truly happy. And I feel that's what my generation at least is missing, because I've had girlfriends over the years that go on about, oh, I hooked up with this guy at a party, or you need to have a one-night stand, you need to experience that. They actually said that to me. And every single one of them was overweight, single, maybe had a illegitimate child, or were divorced. And just, I'm looking at the result of that and I'm going, why are you telling me to go do this completely degenerate thing that feels wrong in my bones when you're sitting here drinking wine every weekend and binging on Netflix and frustrated because your kid upstairs is screaming and there's no one here to help you out and you don't have a partner in life? It just makes no sense.
Well, I think with me, I've got to say to especially young men, sex on its own isn't fulfilling. What's fulfilling is sex with a partner that you love, and waking up next to that partner the next morning and having that meaningful interaction where she wakes up, you put your arms around her and you pull her into you, and she's there the next morning. And that feeling of love, that feeling of togetherness, that's a greater high than any physical sexual act. And the problem is, when people say to you, go out there and just get it out of your system, have a one-night stand, get your leg over, that's not a solution. That'll only lead to an addiction to sex with multiple partners. The solution is finding someone that you have that spiritual connection with. Because when you have that spiritual connection, and you know, I've obviously been in loving relationships before, it's the best thing in the world, and you will want to be a better person when you have that. And you want to be a better person, not just for you, but for your partner. You want to be a better person because you want her to love you more. You want her to see the greatness in you, and you want to please her in every way. And I know what some people are going to say. They're going to go, oh, you've gone all beta, you're a cuck. Why would you want to please a woman? Because you do. And one of the biggest pitfalls for young men is to hate women, because women have been warped by feminism. Men then think, well, if they're going to be feminists and they're going to hate men, I'm going to hate them back. No, it doesn't work like that, because you're never going to find true happiness if you go down that route of sort of reactive misogyny towards women because they've embraced misandry. That's not the way forward. When you meet the girl of your dreams, the woman you want to spend the rest of your life with, you want to embrace her with all your heart and show her the best of you. Do not miss out on that amazing feeling. Do not miss out on that amazing connection because some women are bad or some women have treated you badly. That's not the way to be. And that's why I reject both feminism and the MGTOW movement, because I don't believe men should go their own way. I don't believe that women should turn into poor versions of men who embrace masculinity. I believe that we should embrace our natural gender roles, but more importantly, our natural gender roles are different. And when we come together, we become more than the sum of our parts, because we were designed by nature to be a complementary pair. We were designed to complement one another. Man was designed to do things that women weren't designed for, and women were designed to do things that men weren't designed for. So we cover each other's back with the ultimate partnership. That's what we were created to do. We fit together like a glove, and we cover each other. And that's why we've worked so well together for 40,000 years. The only reason we're not working well together now is because the powers that be, the enemies of the West, the people who want to undermine us and destroy our civilization, have placed these barriers between us. They've placed these incredibly divisive things, such as feminism, as a roadblock to stop us meeting our natural partners and stop us having the wonderful relationships that we have. To stop us raising children. It's an attack on the family unit, because an attack on the family unit is an attack on the Western birth rate, which is an attack on demographics. And that, my friends, is white genocide. It's part of the plot that has been devised to see us outbred and replaced in our own homelands. And we as people, we can't buy into that. So even if you have been hurt, if you have had feminists spit in your face, don't treat all women like that. Open your heart to that one special person, because that's where spiritual happiness and fulfillment really does come from. And please reject this MGTOW nonsense that, men should go their own way, because believe me, men going their own way isn't breeding a generation of little warriors that is going to deliver us from this multicultural nightmare.
Those are excellent words for young men to hear, because I've had the MGTOWs attack my comments with stuff that's just disgusting, like rape this bitch, and they're calling me a cunt, and I had one, he claimed not to be a MGTOW, but he was an MRA, made a response video basically saying, oh, we don't care if Western civilization falls, we'll friggin' light the match. And then the next video he made was a Trump supporter video. So I'm like, clearly, if you wanted Western civilization to fall, you'd have made a Hillary supporting video. So I really don't think at the base of their core, they believe in a lot of this stuff. I think they know it's antithetical to nature.
Of course they do. And the really sad thing is, a lot of these people are angry, and I understand their anger. So I'm not going to say I don't understand the anger.
I understand it as well, yeah.
I understand being angry at the way the world is, being angry at the way that feminism has, driven a wedge between men and women. I'm angry at the way that women are told to go out and have a career and not have children. I'm angry at the way women are told, well, you've met that guy and he really does make you happy, but you'd be happier if he went to Magaluf and jumped from bed to bed for 2 weeks. So get rid of him. Yeah, I'm angry at all of those things, but that doesn't mean all women are doing it. And it certainly doesn't mean that getting angry at women will fix the problem. In fact, that will only exacerbate the problem and play into the hands of feminists. The way we fix this problem, the way we fix the problem of feminism and women turning away from their natural callings, is by embracing women and by upholding the feminine virtues that good women embrace, and by basically trying to re-educate people. We need to come together and form these partnerships and show that there is a better way than separation. There is a better way than women getting to 40 owning 9 cats. And that is forming the family unit. But we can't form that family unit if men and women won't come together. And the fact is, women are being driven away from men, but we cannot allow men to become the mirror image of feminists. And unfortunately, I feel that MGTOW is the mirror image of feminists, and we don't want either of those. We need productive, loving, stable relationships that can foster white children.
Beautiful. I think that's very well said. To bring it back to writing real quick, what do you think is the best writing advice you've ever received?
The best writing advice is something I learned myself. And this is something. When you write, it's a passion, and it should always flow from passion. You should never force yourself to write. If I mean, obviously, you've got to set a schedule. I'm not saying like, oh, my book's going to take 40 years to write. You've obviously got to set a schedule. But when you write, you tend to spill forth things onto the page, and you're tapping away at 100 miles an hour, and words are just coming forth. And you might have written something that somewhere inside that there is the nexus of genius, but it never, ever comes out the way you want it to. And it's very, very difficult to proofread your own work, and you do need to actually proofread your own work.
Yes,
yep,
yes, you do. I learned that the hard way.
You do need a professional proofreader, but you also need to go over it yourself. Now, when I wrote my book, I was in a bit of a bad place at the time, and it kind of spilt forth out of a really difficult time I was having in my life. And when I wrote it, I sent it to a couple of my friends, and I was like, is this garbage, or am I on the right track? And both of my friends, both absolutely wonderful people, I'll give them a shout out, Steve and Scott, they were saying to me, you've got to release it, it's fantastic, it's brilliant, just release it. But I was like, I'm not happy with it. And I sat on it for about 6 months. Once I'd completed the first draft, I went over it, proofread it a bit, but then sat on it for another 6 months. And 6 months sounds like an awful long time. But when I read that again in 6 months' time, it was totally not fresh in my mind. Right? And it was, and I saw it with different, and that's where I tightened everything up. And with the help of a very, very good friend of mine, she's a superb woman, she helped proofread it professionally, and I can't thank her enough for that. Absolutely phenomenal work, and her husband also helped. So thank you to them. I'm not taking any credit away from anyone who deserves it. But when I read it with fresh eyes, it was like seeing it again, and that's what tightened it up to being what it is. So if you've got great ideas, never rush them, because you'll only end up regretting it when you look back on it 12 months down the line with fresh eyes yourself. And now I'm recording it as an audiobook. I've only noticed, I'm halfway through recording as an audiobook, and I've only noticed 2 typos in 13 chapters, and they're only very minor.
Well
so
done.
To go through, I'm really happy with myself in that I haven't rushed it out. Now, the other piece of advice, and this is really important, is it is your book. It's your book, what you're doing. It's a product of you, but it's not for you. And a lot of people I know who start on these projects, they want it to all be in their own image. And I nearly made a huge mistake. I had a title for the book, and I had a front cover, and I thought they were genius. I thought they were like the greatest thing ever. And when I gave them to other people, most people didn't like them. A couple of real intellectuals that I passed the book to shortly before it was published, they understood it. But the vast majority of people like, that cover's really dark and a bit off-putting. And every woman I gave it to was like, it's quite scary, actually. I don't think I'd pick that book up. And I was like, but I love that painting. It really does say this, and it says this, and it illustrates the way Western man's falling. It illustrates the way that Western man has become like a barbarous monster and is becoming animalistic. And they're like, yeah, but it's a bit scary. And I thought, no, I'm making a big mistake here. Rather than listening to what people are saying, I'm trying to justify something to them. And if I have to explain the cover to them or the title, then the cover and the title are wrong, because the cover and the title should explain themselves. And that's a big mistake I see people doing. I know other people who are writing books, and I said to somebody a while ago who's writing a book, they had to explain something to me in it repeatedly and explain. And he said, oh, but this means this, and you're missing the point. And well, if I'm missing the point,
the average reader,
and I'm not saying I'm a genius. I'm not saying I'm a genius. But if somebody who is well read, somebody who's got 4 A's at A level, who's got a degree, who's written a book themselves, isn't understanding the points you're making, a lot of your audience are not going to understand the points you're making. And if you're getting that kind of feedback, because you do need to road test anything you do, and that's another thing, send it out. Once you've gone back and reread it and had it proofed, send it out to a couple of dozen people from all demographics. Send it out to women, to men, to intellectuals, to your brother and sister who don't really read and aren't really that interested in what you do, and see if they get it, because they're the people you're trying to reach. So my big message is, never rush it. Never ever rush it. Read it with fresh eyes, have it proofread, and then proofread it again. But crucially, listen to people's advice. And if things that you understand and think are powerful are completely lost on some people, please rethink them. Because when I came up with my final cover, which I designed myself, obviously because I'm a designer, everyone got it. Everyone got the idea of a statue that is slowly crumbling and is being lost to time. Everyone understood the title, The Fall of Western Man. Some people even saw a biblical connection, like the fall of man to it. You know, they saw other things in it that I hadn't actually seen myself, because it wasn't meant to mirror the fall of man. It was just, you know, this is the fall of Western man. And when I did those and everyone got it, I was like, that's it. And I was so happy I'd listened to my friends, my relatives, the people who had tried to push me in a slightly more productive direction. So don't be closed off to criticism. And don't ever think that criticism is a personal attack, because I see a lot of people who have good ideas, really good ideas, and somebody will come to them and say, it's a good idea, but it could be absolutely mind-blowing if you did this. But they see that as a personal attack and criticism. You know, often the people who go furthest in life aren't just the people who have great ideas, but they're the people who are willing to learn, develop those ideas, and accept criticism. And that's something I learned when I was writing the book. So really, they're my biggest tips. And the other thing, this is my final other little tip. When you're writing, write in the morning.
Yes.
Get up,
I agree.
have a coffee, have a Red Bull, have something. It's a bit sugary, a bit of caffeine that gets your mind firing, you're nice and fresh, and do it in the morning. Never try to write when you're tired, run down, late at night. I remember trying to proofread a couple of paragraphs, and I read them about 30 times. I can't read this anymore. It was about 9 o'clock at night. I looked at them the next morning, and they didn't even need proofing, but they made no sense. At 9 p.m. after writing all day, going to the gym, spending a full day at work, they just weren't making any sense. Do everything on a clear head, and an early morning start is the best thing for a writer. Never ever try to put forward ideas, solutions, or philosophies late at night, because believe me, what you do will not be your best, and it often will not make sense. So, you know, that's really my sort of golden tips of writing. Not that I'm saying that my book is like the be all and end all, that, you know, I'm thinking of a great author. I'm the next David Duke or the next George Lincoln Rockwell in terms of writing, because I'm not saying that at all.
Well, I flipped through it and I thought it was excellent. So please let know that was great use of the English language, Brie. Please let my viewers know where they can find you and where they can find the book.
Well, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook. I accept friend requests from everyone. I'm very open. And as I said, if you need any advice, if you need any help, you know, you're welcome to, you know, turn to me. And that's advice on anything, whether it's on careers, on working, on fitness, on health, on lifestyle, you know, or even writing, you know, anything really. But also my website is www.thefallofwesternman.com. That's the title of my book. It's a free download. People often say to me, especially people who like to, you know, there's always people who are your detractors who like to come on your YouTube and pull you down. Like, what's your game? Well, my game clearly isn't making money off people, because I don't want your money. I don't have a Patreon. I don't ask for PayPal donations. I don't ask for you even to buy my book. I hope you go and download it. It's available for free from there. And if you do want to support me, if you do really enjoy the book and want it on your bookshelf, you know, you can buy it in hardback and paperback, but it is there as a free download. That's my gift to you. It's my gift to the movement. And if it helps people with self-improvement, you know, that is all the thanks I need. If it helps you in any way in your life, it helps transform you, give you inspiration to go out and do something better and to help our movement, then, you know, that's all the thanks I need. So I really hope you enjoy it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. This was excellent. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure being here, and you know, I wish you all the best with your channel and all the best with your own writing and your own endeavors.
Great. Thank you so much, and take care, everyone. Bye.